man from what I seen. I wish I had a good man like Papoose. Remy Ma now want Papoose back, and he done moved in with his new girlfriend. Now she gotta play the hand that she picked. That man.
It appeared to be just another day, but for Remy, it was the beginning of a storm that would rock her to her very core. He stood there waiting for her, as if she were locked up somewhere she couldn't get out of. The streets of New York were filled with people rushing through life with their usual chaotic self-horns blaring, but something was simmering in the shadows, waiting to explode. Remy was a formidable force in the rap industry, powerful, independent, and unstoppable. She had gained her position via perseverance and hard work, but on this particular day, none of that would be sufficient to protect her from the consequences of one hasty choice. She had recently begun a new relationship that at first seemed like a dream. Her girlfriend Vanessa was everything Remy had been looking for. She was self-assured, beautiful, and vibrant. At first, their connection was ideal, and they were inseparable, riding high on passion and love. But as is often the case, the magic began to wear off. For someone like Remy, who had spent her life demanding respect and proving her worth, this felt like a battle she didn't see coming, a storm she wasn't prepared to face, and it was just the beginning. Little arguments became louder and eventually turned into full-fledged fights. Remy was caught up in a fight. The fight that changed everything began as a simple argument that might have been the result of a misunderstanding or perhaps too many drinks. But for Remy, it hit deeper. Stress, jealousy, and old wounds she thought were buried came rushing back before either of them could stop it. She didn't know how to handle trying to find a balance between love and control because Vanessa wasn't the type to stay quiet and push back when she felt she had to, which kept the tension between them alive. Things took a dark turn when the anger took over and clouded her judgment. The same hands that once wrote lyrics that she was deceived in a moment she couldn't recover from when she was inspired and used mix to electrify people. Remy's hands reached Vanessa's throat in a moment of rage that would never be forgotten. She had always prided herself on maintaining control and being the strong one who could navigate life's complexities with calm precision. But tonight, none of that mattered because her carefully crafted armor had cracked. Her chest was heaving with anger, and her mind was swirling in a haze of emotions that she couldn't process. The room felt small and suffocating, with its walls pressing in as if they were closing around her. Wide open, displaying with a violent move the unbridled, primal fury that had been brewing within her for years. The sound of Vanessa's body smacking into the drywall echoed in the room for a second time, seemingly slowing down as Remy pushed her against the wall. All that mattered at that moment was the wrath, rage, and frustration that had been building for so long, a storm that had finally erupted. But Remy remained there with her hands still outstretched and her chest rising and falling with the intensity of her breath. Vanessa's fists gripped the wall as she strained, gasping for air. She looked at Remy to keep herself upright, her breath coming in shallow gasps and her eyes wide with terror. The words felt like a blow, and for a moment, Vanessa's eyes flicked with confusion as Remy's hard, unwavering gaze seemed to be looking through her rather than at her. She didn't understand what Remy was saying, but she did know that she had never seen Vanessa like this before, never seen her so thoroughly consumed by a rage so far removed from the woman she believed she knew. Vanessa's heart raced as she attempted to make sense of it, to reach Remy, to break through the wall of fury that seemed to envelop her. But they had fought before, but this was the first time Remy had lost control like this. Vanessa could see and feel the heavy, dangerous energy that enveloped them both. It was suffocating. "You're not prepared for this," Remy spat, her voice cold as ice. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a plea for understanding. It was just pure anger, raw and unfiltered. She wasn't thinking anymore. She wasn't trying to make sense of the situation. She wasn't trying to find a way to save it. She was just reacting, her emotions running wild, and Vanessa was standing there. The unfortunate target of that storm was vulnerable and afraid. Remy's voice occasionally grew darker and more menacing, making people want to know what's real. Then, as Vanessa realized how dangerous this was, her body trembled uncontrollably. She was trapped helplessly against the intensity of Remy's fury, and her veins squirmed in an attempt to escape Remy's relentless grip, but to no avail. All Vanessa could do was struggle against Remy's overwhelming strength, her actions becoming more frenzied by the moment till Remy Ma released the oppressive weight of the situation that had been crushing her spirit until at last, the scream escaped her throat. It wasn't just a cry though, it was a heartbreaking sound that ripped through the atmosphere, the sound of someone who had never imagined that their world would fall apart like this, or that they would find themselves in this predicament. As Vanessa's scream sliced through her like a blade, Remy's chest constricted, and her breath caught in her throat. It was the sound of someone in agony, someone who was afraid for their life. And at that precise moment, Remy's. When her fury subsided, she suddenly experienced acute clarity. Her head raced as the severity of the situation set in, making her realize that she had crossed a boundary that couldn't be uncrossed, and that the ramifications were already being felt. It was a rush of understanding that slammed her like a ton of bricks. The words hit Remy like a physical blow, knocking the air out of her lungs, and she froze under the weight of them. Vanessa gasped for air, staggered backward, and clutched at her throat, her hands shaking as she attempted to balance herself. Her body felt detached from reality, as if she had stepped outside of herself and was observing the scene from a distance. Vanessa was still pressed against the wall, her body trembling, her breath coming in irregular gasps. The sound was resonating through her mind, cutting through the fog of anger that had obscured her judgment just moments before. A wave of nausea passed through Remy as she saw the absolute terror in her eyes, something she had never seen before, at least not directed at her. She had always connected this sight with victims and individuals who had been stuck in situations from which they were unable to escape. The same hands that had once written lyrics full of power and passion had betrayed her. The same hands that had held Vanessa in tender and loving moments had now left a mark she could never remove. She had built herself up to be untouchable. Her mind repeatedly replayed the shove, the impact, the way Vanessa had gasped for air, and the way she had stared at Remy with sheer horror rather than love or understanding. A woman who had fought her way to the top of the music industry despite every challenge put in her way. Vanessa was an unstoppable force of nature. She abruptly snapped at Remy. Returning to the present, she scrambled for her phone, her fingers shaking so much that she nearly lost it. And as she punched the digits, she nearly dropped a sharp, broken SOBT from her throat. Remy wanted to say anything to halt what was going to happen, to take everything back and show Vanessa that she wasn't this person, that this wasn't who she really was, but she couldn't find the right words. The sirens broke the air, penetrating it more quickly than Remy had anticipated. The reality of what was there was depicted on the walls in harsh, merciless streaks by the fragile hush that had descended between them while red and blue lights flashed. Vanessa flinched as the officers stormed in, filling the small apartment with an authority Remy couldn't resist. They slammed the door open with unsteady hands, and Remy barely registered their words. She barely registered the cold steel of the handcuffs as they snapped around her wrists, sending a sharp pang of reality through her. She had worn chains before, but never like this, never with this sense of finality, of inescapable consequence as she was pushed into the back of the quad car. Captured a final image of Vanessa standing in the doorway, her arms encircling her body, still trembling, but Remy was most moved by her look. When Remy was released far away, she buried her head and squeezed her eyes shut as the car took away everything she had worked so hard to build, her empire, her legacy, the love she had found, all of it in a single angry moment.